Hey everyone, thanks for joining. We're probably going to start a few minutes late just to give people a chance to join. So hang tight. We'll probably start somewhere around 2 or 3 after. Thanks. Hey, thanks for everyone that's joining. We're going to start a few minutes late just to give a few more people time to get signed in. So just hang tight and we'll get started soon. Thanks. Hello, everyone. We give one more minute for people to continue to sign in and we'll get started. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Thanks to everybody for joining today. My name is Adam Ferris. I will be conducting the webinar this afternoon. So I just want to thank everybody who had an opportunity to join us. Once again, this will be recorded and also posted on our webpage for you guys to look at after. So taking a look at the schedule for the upcoming sessions, today we're going to cover receipts routing and kind of the automation possibilities that you can do with that. One of those has to do with EDI, another has to do with utilizing the orchestrator. To continue our series, we're going to get into a manufacturing topic, talking about the modern shop floor on Thursday this week. Wednesday of next week, we will do a CRM to planning, kind of taking an order all the way through end to end and show you guys that. The following week, we're going to talk about some advanced pricing maybe some unique ways that you wouldn't think to use advanced pricing to kind of manage your sales orders. And then to finish up the series that Thursday, we will talk about production scheduling and getting your capacity in check. So the presenters for this entire series are going to be myself, Adam Ferris. I'm a solution architect with Trillium. I've been with Trillium almost 9 years now, specializing in the distribution area. Along with me will be Brian Rose, a manager and over top of our manufacturing practice. Brian will be emceeing the questions for me today. So he'll just be on mute until there's questions that come up. If you do have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to type them into the chat. You can click into the chat, type them in there, and then Brian is going to let me know if there are any questions at the end of each section. So let's get into our agenda for today. So we're going to do a little bit of a functional overview, talk about what receipts routing is, and then also get into our use cases, the EDI use case and the orchestrator. And we'll have a Q&A at the very end if there's any additional questions. So to start, we'll do our functional overview. So I have a feeling that there's probably a mixture of people on this call, some who know what receipts routing is, but might not have it implemented at their in their system. We probably have some that use receipts routing today, but they don't have it automated. It's a very manual. They do the clicks to process the shipments through their system. And then maybe we have some that are already doing some sort of automation, but they were just looking for potential additional ways or ways to enhance that. So for those of you that aren't familiar with receipts routing, what it does is it allows you to take items that are coming inbound on purchase orders and allows you to walk them through step by step and kind of keep track of your in-transit inventory. So as well as if you get goods that maybe get damaged during your shipment, or they give you an overshipment, something like that, and you need to disposition it and return it or create a new purchase order, you can do that as well through receipts routing. What's nice is when you disposition any of the materials through receipts routing, you also have the ability to drive the accounting to different buckets for each of those scenarios as well. So the first step with receipt routing is to set up a receipt route. So you go in there, you create a route code. This code is assigned at the supplier and item relationship level. Once you create that code, you're going to create the different operations that are going to happen through your series. So in this example, we see one that you can see the materials go in transit, then they're received into the dock, then they go into an inspection period, where then eventually they're received into stock. What's also very nice about this is you can choose when you want to capture these goods on your books as far as in-house inventory, and you can capture when you want to be able to pay for the goods depending on what your freight terms are and when you take ownership. So there's a lot of flexibility to using the receipt routing setup. Like I said, there's a movement and disposition application, so the P43250. That's what allows you to move the goods through the receipt route if you're going into the application and moving it. There's some processing options behind that allow you to either move to the next operation or to any operation that you would like to. I know that some clients that I've set up receipt routing at, they have cases where they want to be able to jump steps. So rather than go from in transit to at the dock, maybe there's some cases where they need to go from in transit directly to in inspection. Depending on your processing option setup, you can make that happen. This is a look at the disposition setup. So once you account for what types of dispositions you want to be able to accommodate for, then you can determine if you want to capture a unique GL class code related to those dispositions. And if so, then you can drive the accounting related to that. So that's a nice feature. So receipt routing perks gives you the overall tracking of your in-transit and inspection processes. It can be simple or complex. So it can be just a single in-transit to stock movement, which you're going to see with our 3PL example today, or it can be complex where it has multiple steps to carrying the product through different inventory buckets when you look at your availability. There's also the ability to capture unique receipt routes by supplier and item. So you may have, well, it's not just supplier and item, it's also at the branch plant level. So you could have several different types of routes for supplier and items depending on what branch they're in. You could have them all be the same. It's really dependent on how those goods flow and how you want to track them. and dispositions help keep your inventory and your GL accurate, which is nice. Some pains with receipt routing. One of the main ones that I hear is just the setup and maintenance of your supplier and item relationships. So some people don't maintain supplier and item relationships other than for the reason of using receipts routing. You have to have that set up in order to perform the receipts routing and have the flexibility of that. And some people are only using it for that reason and don't like the maintenance of that. Another one would be the manual clicks to move the product from route step to route step. So hopefully today will give you, if you're one of those people that you feel the pain of manually moving it, then maybe today will give you some options of things that you might be able to look to do in the future to help automate that. As far as your in-transit inventory, when you go to your summary availability for an item, you have buckets that are way far to the right of your grid. I wanted to make sure that you saw, knew that they were there. You have a bucket that's for on PO, a bucket that's for in routing, and then you also have your 4 buckets of in-transit, in inspection, operation 1, and operation 2. If you needed to change those column headers, you could. You could do address book overrides or personal forms to change those to however you wanted those buckets to be recognized. But those are there, and as you move product throughout the receipt route, those buckets will get updated. So our first example today, we're going to talk a little bit about EDI and inbound carrier updates with multiple route steps. So with this scenario, we're utilizing the receipt route interoperability program. So there's an application in JD Edwards. Some of you might not know that it even exists, but it is the P43092Z1. And this is where we capture all of the information needed to process that movement. In addition, there is a batch program, the R43092Z1I, which is what processes that information once it's populated into the table. So we're going to be utilizing both of those today. You could utilize a flat file to populate this. You could utilize an EDI transaction to populate this, APIs. It really depends. A lot of large motor carriers out there already have 214 processes set up, and they might be able to send you a 214. It would just be up to your team to make sure that you get that mapped correctly and you get the fields taken care of that you need to be able to walk this through the receipt route as they send their updates. I would encourage you that if you go down that path, make sure that you talk with your motor carrier and determine how many updates will they give you. Will they give you an update of when they first pick it up and then when they drop it off to you, or are there any intermittent updates that they can give you as well? Because you're going to want to keep that in mind when you're creating your receipt route. If they're only going to give you 2 updates, then you're going to want to create a very simple route so that you can just capture both. You'll be able to recognize it as in transit and then into your warehouse once it arrives there. Another one that you might be familiar with if you're doing any international shipments overseas is the EDI 315. So there's a lot of international carriers out there that are already set up to do 315 messages to send what they've picked up and what they're bringing over to you. Once again, make sure that you talk with them about how often can they provide you with these updates. And another would be, what's the level of detail that they could provide you? Can they provide you down to the SKU count? Some might be able to, I would say most won't, which gives you also a window there for, do you want to make sure that you track all of these goods all the way up to your dock, and then at your dock step, you're going to need to make sure that you account for any overshipments, undershipments, or maybe damage during shipment processes. All right, so let's get into the system and take a look at our first scenario. So I'm in JD Edwards. I created a simple composed page just to follow us through this first scenario. We'll go in and take a look at the order that I already entered. I didn't want you guys to have to sit here and bore you with me entering orders today. So the first one is just a standard inbound purchase order. It's already been received into my receipt route. So to get it to this step, I entered my purchase order, I printed it, sent it to the supplier, and then I did a receipt. And for those of you that aren't familiar with receipts routing, you use the standard P4312 purchase order receipts program, but there's a processing option on the process tab that you activate your receipts routing. And as long as you have a receipt route code attached to your supplier and item relationship, it'll use that, and it will put the items into the receipt route that they should go into. So once you perform that receipt, it'll say some items have entered into the routing. and then they'll be ready to process through receipts routing. If I come out of here and I go to my work with receipt status, so this is my movement and disposition program. Here's that same order. I've got it at my first step right now. It's notified in transit, so I know the goods are coming. They're on their way, and I'm just waiting to see, waiting to get updates on when they're going to arrive. The next part to this is that file, right? So we want to look at our inbound receipt information. So this is the P43092Z1. I've got my file prepped in here. So we're just going to manually mimic that EDI process or flat file process that would be populating this information. You'll notice it looks very similar to a lot of those inbound EDI programs that you have where you have a successfully processed flag and such. But one difference that you'll notice also is that there is no header in detail. It's all just one table. So if I go to do a row exit and look for my header in detail, it's just one file. So I'm going to go in here and we look over it. I've got my document information. I've got my sequence number. So the sequence number is the sequence number that comes from your receipt route. At each step, you need your sequence number to be equal to the current position of those goods. So right now, my goods are in transit. Transit is my very first step in my receipt route. So my sequence number on that was 1. My successfully processed is blank because it just came in. I've captured what my normal route code was for that supplier and item relationship. I've also populated what the current code is and what the new code is. We found ways to populate those, could be through either utilizing a custom UDC or just doing a lookup based on the receipt route code if you look it up against the supplier item relationship for that branch. How many lines do I have? What company? What's the order number? Suffix, and then I get to the quantity at operation. So there are 10 items that were ordered during the step. I want to move 10 of them. So this is them confirming that they picked up 10 of the goods, and then which branch plant, and what's my unit of measure. So this is all information that the carrier sent over to me and is ready to process. If I go back out to my page, I've also got a button out here that's set up for process my inbound receipt information. Most likely you're going to have this on a scheduled process based on when those carriers and when the carriers would be able to send you the information. For the sake of the demo, we're just kicking it off manually. So I'm going to kick off my batch program. All right, so now what that did is it went out and it processed that file. So if I go look at my unedited transactions, right now you can see the successfully processed was blank because it had not been processed. Do my find, successfully processed, yes. And when we go back to our routing statuses, we're going to see that it moved to the next step. So now we're at C. So they sent that file. It said, hey, we're on the ocean. It's in movement. Not only did we just pick it up, but we're currently bringing it your way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm just going to edit the same file. We're going to move to sequence step 2. I just wanted to make sure that you guys understood which of these fields are really critical to this process. The operation code is going to be our new current code, which is C, and our to operation is going to be customs. Then we're going to clear our successfully processed flag, and we're still going to say that at this point we're planning on receiving 10 goods, right? So we're going to go ahead and save this. So this is the second time that the file would have come in. In a normal process, what would have happened here is you would have files that are building up. You could do some sort of query to get the files that have successfully processed out of here so that you're not constantly looking at them. And your data selection on the program would be looking at anything that is blank or not equal to Y, right? So now we're ready to process to our second step. So I'm going to go back out to my composed page. I'm going to process that inbound receipt to the next step. When I come back to my unedited transactions, we've processed successfully. When I go and check my routing status, all right, now we're into customs. So let's say that you transfer ownership at the customs dock. So you have maybe one of your trucks that are going to go and pick it up, and you're going to do a quick count of how many things did you pick up at the customs dock to make sure that you have all the goods. So originally they said, hey, we got 10, we're sending 10. You go out there and you're going to check it once you pick it up at customs. We're going to go update our file for the next step. All right, so we're at step 3. We're going from customs to stock. So this could happen at your dock. It could happen at the customs dock if you want to consider inventory that's on your truck still coming inbound as available inventory. That's really up to your business process. So there we go. We're going to save that. Actually, hold on real quick. Let's say that you're processing this at your dock. And when you pull the goods off the truck, you've got 8 boxes that are good and 2 that were damaged during your shipment. What you're going to do is you're going to come in here and you would make sure that your file has the ability to update according to that. So if you scan in 8 good ones, make sure that you have a process to be able to account for the 2 that are damaged so that it can send it correctly in the file. If you're able to do that, then what you can do is you've got your quantity at the operation is 10 currently. Your quantity moved is going to be 8. And then if I come over here, I've got my quantity returned. So let's say that they were damaged and I want to return them. So I'm going to say that my quantity returned is 2 and my reason is going to be damaged during shipment. So I'm going to go ahead and save this file. So this file is ready to process now. It's telling me that it got 8 of my items and 2 of them were damaged and are going to need to be returned. And off of this process, you could have that kick off some sort of RMA process if you needed to, whatever your process is that you need to be able to return those goods to the supplier. So we're going to go back out and kick that process off again. And once again, this is that R43092Z1I program. Go take a look at our unedited transactions. All right, we've got a successfully processed yes. Now when we come back to look at our work with statuses, we should see that it only received in 8 to the dock. All right, we received in 8 to stock, and those other 2 would have been dispositioned. So depending on how our accounting was set up for that disposition step of returned, it's going to account for that based on that setup. So that's really how to use the interoperability program. Like I said, one of the big things to this entire process is figuring out how am I going to get that data into my system. And a lot of that's going to come from your carrier. So hopefully the carriers that you're using, some of them you'll be able to go ahead and take advantage of them already having that process in place and being able to give you some of that information. And once you get it, then you could definitely use that file type to be able to process through those. All right, so let me close out of this real quick. We're going to move on to our second scenario. Are there any questions before I start, Brian, on that first use case?
Yeah, hey Adam. So there's just one question that I see right here, and it's I think it should be a pretty easy one for you. Do you know of any constraints around tools releases for receipt routing, or has it been around for a long time?
No, receipts routing has been around for a long time. One of the things that I will caution you with is that one of the things that I found, depending on what release you're on, is that it's supposed to do a validation with the short item number. So rather than bringing in the second item number, that Z file, the P43092Z1, it utilizes the short item number. And what I found that on some of the older releases, there was a bug where it was not validating against the correct short item number. So it could have been, if you actually are able to get data all the way down to the correct SKU level, you might be missing that validation piece when you're doing this interoperability step, unless you took the update. But as of right now, receipts routing has been around for a while, and you could start using the base receipts routing on most versions. I'm not sure how far exactly it goes back, but I know it's in 9.1 and 9.2. I would also assume it was probably in 9.0 as well. All right, so we'll move on to our next one. So this one's utilizing Orchestration, and our scenario here is we have a 3PL warehouse. So we're doing our manufacturing process in our main warehouse, and then we're doing STOT shipments to our 3PL to get goods at the 3PL ready to distribute whenever we do a sales order. You could do it also if it's just one of your warehouses. It might not be a 3PL, but this is a way to kind of automate the update of when those goods get in there. So what we're going to use for this is a different program. We're going to use the JD Edwards Inbound 861 process. So that the program for that is the P47070. And then the tables that are being used, the header table is the 47071, and the detail is 47072. These could be populated with an inbound flat file. I believe that the 4702C program could be used to bring flat files in and populate this table if you needed. So that's something to know. I'll look back where we talked about those pain points. The receipt routing pain point where we talked about setup and maintenance of supplier and item relationships. Real quick, related to the setup of that, I wanted to talk about an orchestration that we built that can help you keep those in check. So you could do an orchestration that would go out there, look at open purchase orders, and anything that's an open purchase order, you could have a custom UDC out there. That's what we utilize. We utilize a custom UDC with a description 1 and description 2 fields to validate that all of the supplier and item relationships for a specific 3PL branch would have the same receipt route, because everything going to that 3PL was going to go through the same shipping process. So when we did that, this is kind of what our overall business process flow looked like. So for any STOT that was created from the 4210, we then had an orchestration that was validating against the 4311 for anything that was at 220 to 400. And then if the record does exist, then we were validating, does it have the correct route code? If yes, no action or notification. If no, there was an orchestration to update the supplier and item relationship, adding a normal, the normal route based off of that custom UDC. Depending on if you have your system set up to create supplier and item relationships at order entry, so there is a processing option to do that from purchase order entry. If you do not have that turned on, then you could add a step to the orchestration that would actually go in and create the supplier and item relationship for you and apply that normal route code. If you do have that turned on, then you should never get a no answer to if that record exists. The record will be there. It would just be a matter of, does it actually contain a route code at that point? So here's a look at kind of what that orchestration looked like when we built that out for updating route codes. First step was to fetch the information based on the route code. We had rules in there determining whether fields were populated or not. You'll notice that this is also from an older release of the orchestrator, because we're calling connectors that have embedded orchestrations in them as well. With the most recent Orchestrator Studio updates in 9.2.4, you actually can call orchestrations directly from other orchestrations without doing connectors. In the past, you had to use a connector to do that. So I just wanted to give you a little view of what that flow would look like for all of those steps to be able to go through that process. So let's go through and demo this one right now. All right, so this is our STOT has been entered, and we're ready to take a look and process our OT receipt into our 3PL location. So first off, I wanted to give you a look at where our orders are at status-wise. So our ST right now has been received, it's been ship confirmed, and it's ready to be invoiced, right? So if you're going to do any sort of invoicing based off the STOT movement, it's ready to go through that process. If we take a look at our purchase order, we're going to see something very similar to what we saw with our last scenario, that it's going to be at a 400 to 400 status, right? So that means that we're in our receipt route, we're in transit right now, and ready to make a movement. So let's take a look at our receipt routing status. So if I come out here, take a look at that, we're in transit right here. Now this one has a completely different route code assigned to it. In our last example, we had a route code that had 4 steps. It went in transit to the sea, to customs, and then also to stock. This one is just tracking in transit domestically to our 3PL. It may be a 3PL that's located fairly close, and we just want to make sure that we can keep track of our trucks going back and forth. So this one is just capturing in transit and then into stock. If we go back and we look at our information, this is the 861 program, and here's the file that I have prepped. Go in and show you the header information really quick. We've got our company information, an EDI document, number and type. We've got our order information in there, which branch it's coming into. If we go all the way over to our successfully processed, right? So our successfully processed is blank right now. And then we've got our record type and so on. We go into our detail, our item, how many are coming in, and then we've got all of our order information as well. So what we're going to do for this example, I added a form extension. So this button right here is not normally a part of this program standard. I added a form extension to call the orchestration for me for the sake of not having to use a schedule. In a real scenario, you guys would probably have this orchestration running on a scheduler, ready to process the information as it populated this table. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kick off that process, which would normally be kicked off by the scheduler. So I click the button. All right, find. We've got successfully processed, yes. If I come back out to my routing statuses, do a find, we've received it into stock. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what happened there in that orchestration. And I put it into PowerPoint just so that we wouldn't have any lag going through the studio. It would be a lot of clicking around because there are a lot of embedded orchestrations within this one. So the first step is to fetch our batch header data. So we're looking at the header information, things that are at a not equal to Y that are in the 47071. Anything that's not equal to Y, we're capturing values from that, and then we're throwing them into the next orchestration, which is fetching the batch detail. When we move to the batch detail, we're going to do a lookup on the batch detail, which is where we're going to get all of that item information and order information that was sent over from our 3PL. And we're going to look to match our quantities in the next orchestration for, all right, we said that we sent 10 over. Did they receive 10 into their location? What that looks like is a little bit like this. So we did our fetch, and then we did a quantity comparison. So I've got my quantity ordered and my quantity received. If they equal 10 and 10, then it's true, and it's going to go up to do my receipt movement, and it's going to follow up with update my header file as a yes for successfully processed. If we are false, that means that they don't match. We're going to update our detail to an E for error, and then there would also be a notification that's going to come out based on that. The next step was to update the actual header information. So we would go out there, anything that was successfully processed in the detail, we're going to go ahead and update the header to a Y. So in this one, our rule was looking at, are there any lines on the purchase order that do not currently equal 999 next status? Because that would mean that it did not successfully make its movement through the receipt route. If there are any records that come back over that are not 999 and they're still at 400, then it's going to be a true, which means it errored, and we're going to send an error message. If it's false, meaning that we got 0 records returned, then we're going to be able to go update our header as Y, which is what happened, and we're going to be able to successfully process that order from there. So basically what we did in this orchestration is we did all of the processing that happens in that batch program from the R43092Z1 for the other process. We did that within a built orchestration that's going through and manually making those moves for us. So that wraps up the second scenario of just the standard 3PL update for in transit. Do we have any questions from that point, Brian?
Hey, Adam, yeah, one more. So earlier you showed the ability to add a button onto a screen. How do you do that? What type of technology is doing that in JD?
Yeah, so to be able to add that button onto the screen, we use the form extension. It's one of those user-defined objects that are out there that are available. That one was first available in, I believe, 9.2.3.5 tools, I believe. It might have been available before that, but you weren't able to actually associate an orchestration to it before that. So what that allows you to do is go into your form extension tool, add a button, and then I was able to associate an orchestration from that point. If you're on a tools release that is at 9.2.3.5 and you would like help getting that activated or being able to use it or learn how to use it, or if you just want to see how that's done, let us know. We have several different workshops that we can do on user-defined objects, as well as orchestrator training workshops that we do that can kind of help you out with that. Was that it?
Yep, that was it.
All right. So to conclude, just wanted to let you guys know that please join us for the rest of the series. Like I said, all of these are just going to be quick hit functional updates. If you want to register for any of the ones that I showed you at the beginning, feel free to go to that link, https://bit.ly/JDE series, and you can register there. I also want to let you guys know, for those of you that enjoy getting some functional tips and tricks, please shoot us some ideas for future webinars that you would like to see. If it's a topic that we've had a lot of experience with, and we think that it would be a good topic for a lot of other potential JD Edwards users out there, then we'll put together a webinar for it, and we'll get it out there and show you guys. So thanks everybody for attending today, and we look forward to seeing you on Thursday for our next one.